I always believed parents wanted the best for their children, until the day I realized mine saw me as nothing more than their personal investment. My name is Ryan Carter. I grew up in a small suburban town where everyone knew everyone's business, and appearances mattered more than truth. My parents, James and Linda Carter, were what people called the perfect couple. My dad was a proud businessman, or at least that's what he called himself, and my mom, a homemaker who never missed a Sunday at church. From the outside, we looked picture perfect, but behind those polished smiles, there were cracks I never noticed. Ever since I was a kid, my parents drilled one thing into me. Study hard, Ryan. We're saving for your future. One day you'll go to college and make us proud. And I believed them, every single word. When I was 10, my dad opened a college fund in my name. He'd tell everyone at family dinners, every month I put a little something aside for Ryan's education. My boy's going to have a real chance in life. I'd smile proudly. I thought I was lucky to have parents who cared so much. By the time I turned 17, the plan was clear. I'd apply to Stanford, the dream school I'd been talking about since middle school. I worked hard, stayed up late, never missed an exam. And when that acceptance letter finally came, I felt like the world was mine. But what came next shattered that world into pieces. When I showed my parents the acceptance letter, they smiled, but their reaction wasn't what I expected. My mom said, "Oh, honey, that's amazing, but Stanford is expensive." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "We've got the college fund, right?" But then my dad cleared his throat and avoided eye contact. About that, the air in the room felt heavier. He said the words slowly. "We had to use the money, Ryan. Things got complicated this year." I remember staring at them, trying to understand. "Use it? For what?" My mom whispered. "The mortgage. Your father's business hit a rough patch. We thought we could replace it before you needed it." My hands went cold. All I could manage to say was, "How much is left?" They looked at each other. Then my dad muttered, "None. None." All those years, every "don't worry, it's for your future" was a lie. I felt betrayed, but I tried to stay calm. "So, what do we do now?" My mom said softly, "You can take a gap year, maybe get a job, apply for loans. We'll figure something out." But there was no "we." I could see it in their eyes. They weren't sorry. They were embarrassed that their little lie had finally caught up to them. A few weeks later, I started working part-time at a local diner, saving every penny I could. I didn't talk much to my parents anymore. The house felt colder. But one night, while helping my mom with some paperwork, I saw something strange. A bank statement, different from the one we usually used. The account name was L&J Carter Holdings. It wasn't our main family account. Curiosity got the better of me. When I asked her, she quickly snatched the papers and said, "That's private, Ryan. Don't touch things you don't understand." That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about her tone, her fear. It didn't feel like a normal reaction. So the next day, while they were out, I searched through my dad's old desk drawer. That's when I found it. A folder labeled Tax Files 2021. Inside were statements from that same hidden bank account. But what I saw next made my stomach drop. Balances. Large ones. $43,000 deposited last year. $27,000 before that. I whispered to myself, "No way." They told me the money was gone, that the mortgage took everything. But here it was, a secret bank account filled with money. Money that could have easily paid for my college, twice. I remember sitting there, staring at the paper, my hands trembling. Everything I thought I knew about them. It all felt fake. My parents didn't just lie. They stole from me. And in that moment, something inside me changed. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to beg for help. They took my future once. Now I was going to take back control and make sure they never saw it coming. For days I couldn't stop thinking about that hidden account. Every time I looked at my parents, I saw the truth behind their smiles. They hadn't just taken my college fund, they had treated my future like it was theirs to spend. Anger bubbled inside me, but it wasn't blind rage. I needed a plan. I needed leverage. I started by paying closer attention to their routines. Every morning, my dad would leave for work at exactly 7:15 a.m., briefcase in hand, always checking his phone before locking the door. My mom followed soon after, usually heading to the grocery store or the gym. I realized that if I wanted to access information or even just confirm what I had seen, I had to be careful. Then one weekend, while my parents were visiting relatives, I went through the house more thoroughly. I checked the desk drawers again, not just the obvious ones. That's when I found a small envelope tucked behind old bills, labeled in my mother's handwriting, "Emergency Fund. Personal use only." Inside were bank statements and receipts, proof that my parents had not only drained my college fund, but had been moving money into secret accounts for years. They had been living comfortably while pretending we were struggling. Every late-night lecture about budgeting and sacrifice now felt like a cruel joke. I felt a surge of betrayal stronger than anything I had ever experienced. But along with that, something else emerged. Clarity. I realized that I couldn't confront them immediately. Confrontation without proof would backfire. They were clever, and they knew how to manipulate emotions. I needed a strategy, one that would make them accountable without giving them a chance to gaslight me. Over the next month, I carefully documented everything. I scanned statements, noted patterns of transactions, and backed everything up on a secure cloud drive. I also continued my job at the diner, saving as much money as I could. I wasn't just collecting evidence, I was building my own independence. During this time, I started to notice little things. My dad bragging about investments at work, which didn't match what I had seen in the bank statements. My mom talking about vacations they had budgeted carefully for, which were clearly funded by the secret account. Every lie, every tiny inconsistency, was another piece of the puzzle. One night I found myself staring at a photo of my high school graduation. My parents were smiling proudly, arms around me, but all I could feel was anger. They had promised to support my dreams, and instead they had betrayed me in the most personal way possible. I whispered to myself, "They think they're untouchable. They're about to learn how wrong they are." I knew I had to wait for the right moment. I couldn't let emotion take over. Revenge, in my mind, wasn't about hurting them. It was about exposing the truth and reclaiming what was mine. I had to be smart, patient, and relentless. Then, one day, an idea came to me. If I could prove their hidden wealth publicly, in a way they couldn't deny, I could take back control without a direct confrontation. I began planning, connecting dots, thinking about every possible way to reveal the truth and secure my future at the same time. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, about showing them that betrayal has consequences. I spent weeks perfecting the plan in my mind, rehearsing how I would uncover the truth while protecting myself. Every detail mattered: timing, evidence, even my own demeanor. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how powerful I had become without even touching their accounts. Knowledge itself was my weapon. I was no longer the naive kid who trusted blindly. I was awake. I was aware, and I was ready. For weeks I practiced how I would sound. Not angry, not begging, just calm and certain. I copied every statement, scanned every receipt, and saved everything to 3 places: my laptop, a friend's email, and a locked USB that I left with my cousin. If anything happened to me or my files vanished, someone else would have the proof. Knowledge was the only weapon I needed. I picked my cousin Maria because she didn't take sides. She was the kind of person who asked hard questions and refused to be manipulated. I slid the folder across her kitchen table one evening and watched her eyes move over the numbers. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she looked at me and said, "This is all here. You're not imagining it." Her voice was steady, like she just decided to be my ally. Next, I did something that felt both cowardly and clever. I contacted a lawyer. Not to start an immediate legal war, too public, too messy, but to get advice on what would hold up, what I needed to do to make my case real. The lawyer listened, asked a few questions, and told me that the documents I had were strong, but that the best leverage was outside the courtroom: family, reputation, and the fear of legal exposure. I set the stage carefully. I called my parents and told them I had a surprise. A scholarship interview had gone better than expected, and I needed to celebrate. They were flattered and proud, just like they always wanted to be. I planned the dinner for a Sunday when two of my aunts and Maria would also be there. I told no one why they were invited. The house smelled like roasted chicken and yams when everyone arrived. My parents were on their best behavior: proud smiles, extra politeness. I sat at the head of the table and waited until the right moment, until the kids' laughter thinned and the wine glasses were half empty. Then I stood up. "I have something to share," I said, and the room went quiet. My father's smile tightened. My mother blinked, like she was bracing for bad weather. I didn't announce my plan or threaten them. I simply walked to the counter and set the folder on the table. "Do you remember the promise you made to me?" I asked. "The college fund." My voice was soft, but it cut through the quiet. My father stammered. We thought we could—" I didn't let him finish. I opened the folder and laid out the statements, the deposits, the dates. I explained calmly how I'd found the account, how the numbers didn't match the story they'd told me, and how every sacrifice they'd cited to explain the missing money was a lie. My mother's face went white. She reached for the papers like she might destroy them, but Maria put a steady hand over the top sheet. "No," Maria said. "Not tonight." They started to talk fast, apologies stitched with excuses. "We were young," my dad said. "We had debts. We didn't know how to tell you." But their words sounded hollow in the ring of witnesses. My aunts asked questions I hadn't dared ask. Where did the money come from? Why hide it? Who knew? When my father tried to shift the blame, "We were protecting you. We thought loans would traumatize you." My uncle, who had been quiet until then, stood and said, "Protection doesn't mean stealing your child's future. You both need to fix this." His voice was calm, absolute. That was the moment I felt the power shift. It wasn't just me versus them anymore. It was family against deception. They begged for time. They promised to return what they could. My mother cried, a thin, wet sound that didn't reach her eyes. I listened. I had expected anger to make me feel better, but what steadied me was the look on my cousin Maria's face. Pride, not pity. I wanted to prove that I could stand without them, that I could take my future back. After the meeting, my uncle called the lawyer I'd consulted and arranged a mediation. It wasn't a court case yet, just a formal conversation with a neutral third party. The mediator's presence changed the tone of things. Under his questions, small excuses collapsed into facts. Transactions were traced. Plans were made for repayment schedules. My parents agreed to sell a rental property and to set up a legitimate, transparent college account in my name, with joint oversight by my uncle until the debt was cleared. It wasn't perfect justice. They couldn't instantly replace lost years or erase the lies. Repayment would be slow, and trust would take longer to rebuild, but the ledger lines were real now. For the first time since I'd opened that hidden folder, I felt the air give. In the weeks that followed, there were hard conversations and small acts of restitution. My parents learned what it meant to be accountable in front of the people they cared about. I learned how fragile appearances are and how strong I could be when I stopped pretending everything was fine. At night, lying awake in my little room above the diner where I now worked double shifts, I felt a strange calm. I had been betrayed, yes, but I hadn't been broken. I had taken a terrible thing and turned it into a map for my future. The money would come slowly, but more importantly, I had evidence, allies, and a plan. I closed my eyes and whispered to the empty ceiling, "You thought you could steal my future. You were wrong." And for the first time since the acceptance letter, I slept. Months passed, and the tension at home never fully disappeared. My parents were quieter now, careful with their words, aware that I wasn't the same kid they could manipulate with smiles and promises. Every interaction carried an unspoken truth. I knew, and they feared it. I focused on my own path. I kept working at the diner, saving every penny, and applied for scholarships and grants like my life depended on it, because it did. Slowly, I realized that even without their money, I had options. The anger I had carried began to transform into determination. I wasn't just reclaiming a lost college fund. I was building the kind of independence that no one could steal. During this time, I received unexpected support from family members I hadn't considered allies. My uncle, who had intervened at the dinner, continued to guide me through financial decisions. My cousin Maria stayed in constant contact, helping me track communications and documents, ensuring that nothing my parents said could undermine my position. It was empowering to realize I wasn't alone. One afternoon, I sat down with a spreadsheet and mapped out every cent I would need for tuition, living expenses, and incidentals. I compared it to my current savings, scholarship applications, and part-time job income. It was going to be tight, but achievable, and for the first time, I felt fully in control. I no longer had to rely on promises. I had numbers, evidence, and a clear plan. Eventually, my parents had to act. The mediator facilitated the repayment plan, and they reluctantly started transferring money into a legitimate college fund. Watching those deposits arrive felt surreal. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about righting a wrong, reclaiming what had been stolen, and proving to myself that I could create a future despite betrayal. By the start of the next school year, I had enough funds to cover tuition and living expenses. I moved into my dorm with a mix of pride and quiet triumph. My parents attended the move-in weekend, but I could see the difference. Their smiles were forced, their words careful. The power dynamic had shifted completely. During the first semester, I excelled academically. Every time I stepped into a lecture hall, I reminded myself of the journey that brought me there, not just the hard work of school, but the fight for my future against those who had tried to steal it. The betrayal, the hidden accounts, the stolen years, they had shaped me. I had transformed the anger and disappointment into resilience, focus, and determination. Occasionally, I would hear my classmates complain about loans or scholarships, and I would smile inwardly. I understood their struggles, but I also knew that I had already navigated something far more personal and complicated. I had reclaimed my life from the people who should have nurtured it. That knowledge was more valuable than any sum of money. By the end of the academic year, I had received a partial scholarship for the next term and managed to secure a part-time internship related to my field. The combination of savings, scholarship, and internship income meant I could continue my studies without relying on my parents at all. I was free in a way I had never been before. Looking back, I realized that the betrayal I suffered had been the catalyst for my growth. My parents' deception could have destroyed me, but instead, it revealed strength I didn't know I possessed. I had learned vigilance, patience, and the importance of documenting the truth. I had discovered the value of self-reliance and the power of standing up for myself. The lesson was clear. Trust is earned, not assumed, and betrayal, while painful, can teach resilience. I had reclaimed what was mine, not through vengeance but through strategy, patience, and courage. And as I walked across the campus, carrying books in one hand and determination in the other, I knew something important. I was no longer a victim. I was the architect of my own future. By the time I entered my second year of college, the tension with my parents had settled into a quiet, uneasy truce. They had fulfilled their repayment obligations, but the warmth that had once defined our relationship was gone. I didn't hate them. Not really. I understood that people make terrible choices, even those who are supposed to love you the most. But I also understood that love without honesty is worthless. I focused on my life. I joined clubs, made friends who shared my ambitions, and poured myself into my studies. Every achievement felt sweeter because it was entirely mine, earned with my own effort, my own resources, and my own resilience. The betrayal that had once threatened to define me was now just a chapter in a much larger story of growth. Occasionally, I would think about the hidden bank account, the stolen college fund, and the nights I spent planning my comeback. Those memories were painful, but they were also empowering. They reminded me that I could confront injustice not with blind rage, but with strategy, evidence, and calm determination. I had learned that true power doesn't come from hurting others, it comes from reclaiming control over your own life. One evening, while Skyping with my cousin Maria, I reflected on everything that had happened. "You know," I said, "I almost didn't make it through that first year, but now I feel unstoppable." She laughed softly. "You always were, Ryan. You just didn't know it yet." I smiled, realizing she was right. That betrayal, as devastating as it had been, had revealed strengths I never would have discovered otherwise. It had forced me to stand up for myself, to trust my instincts, and to take control of my destiny. In a strange way, I was grateful. The final piece of closure came unexpectedly. One afternoon, I received a letter from my parents. It wasn't an apology. They still struggled to express true remorse, but it was a recognition of accountability. They had set up a separate fund for my younger sibling, with strict oversight and transparency, ensuring that history wouldn't repeat itself. It was a small gesture, but it told me they had at least learned something from their mistakes. I realized then that life is rarely fair. People you love will disappoint you, sometimes profoundly. But how you respond defines who you are. I chose not to let their betrayal break me. I chose to reclaim what was mine, to build my own future, and to do so with integrity. That choice gave me a sense of power and freedom no hidden account or stolen fund could ever take away. As I walked across the campus on a bright autumn morning, the wind brushing my face, I felt a calm certainty. I had faced deception, betrayal, and loss, and I had emerged stronger. The college fund they drained, the lies they told, and the years they manipulated had all led me here, capable, independent, and unshakably determined. I had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the people who should protect you the most are the ones who hurt you. But that doesn't mean your life is over. It means you have a choice: to rise, to reclaim, and to build a future that no one can steal. And in that moment, I smiled, knowing I had done exactly the